What is up guys, today I'm continuing work on this 2009 Honda CR-V to match the original body color of the car to the new rear hatch and bumper, and I'm going to attempt to do this completely at home without any special tools. Let me give you a little background on this car. This is my 2009 Honda CR-V EXL that I purchased from auction for just about $1,000 USD. And while the car had no significant damages, I did have to get its rear brakes changed and obviously the rear hatch along with the rear bumper. Now here's the thing with online auctions. You get to physically see the car only after bidding and paying for the car completely. That means online bids are always supposed to be placed with calculated risks which may or may not bring you good returns. In my case, I bought the CR-V and later found out that the previous owner of this car was the dog mom, which means the car was completely filled with dog fur and other animal shedding. It took me about a day to complete the interior cleaning to look from this to this. And after a thorough exterior cleaning, I got the car to look lively again. And I also had to get its battery replaced along with the engine air intake filter as well as the cabin air filter. And I also went another step further to modernize this 15-year-old car with a massive 9-inch screen that also supports 360 camera. The steering wheel was in a bad shape, so I decided to bring the steering wheel back to life with an Italian premium OEM perforated leather. And this brings us to today. In today's video, I need to paint match the rear end of the car to the rest of the body. And I'm going to try to do this completely by myself at my residence without any fancy tools. And not just the exterior, but also the interior of the rear hatch, so that the idea is it would be very difficult to say that this rear end was painted in the first place. Obviously, with a bit more observation, you can tell if any panel has been repainted before, but you get the idea. Here you can see that there is a tab that covers the bolt for the bumper, and the tab has an OEM glacier blue color. That would be ideally the same color of the interior panel, which currently has this brown paint. Now this 2009 CR-V has been facelifted from the rear end to a 2011 model, because that was the only available used spare parts at that time, which if you think about it is not a bad thing, and it does look better than before on the rear end. In today's video, I'm going to be using a paint kit from Scratches Happen, and this is not a sponsored video, so whatever results you see, you can be the better judge. I went ahead and downloaded the aerosol spray step-by-step instructions from their website, and because this is my first time doing a complete paint job at home, I wanted to make sure I follow every single step that is instructed by the manufacturer. Something to notice is that this paint kit is a waterborne paint, which is also used by most OEMs and shouldn't be wet sanded. I'll speak more about this in a couple of minutes. But before that, just for a reference, I'm taking pictures of the location of these Honda badges, although I'll try my best not to completely sand off the sticker residue, because this is a trick that many painters use, where instead of completely sanding the sticker residue of the badges, I'm gonna keep it to a minimum where at the end of the day, I can then place these badges over the existing residue. You will understand what I'm talking about in a couple of minutes. Alright, let's talk about the elephant in the room. I bought this rear hatch used, and hence it also has a couple of rust spots. But the good news is that when I inspected the rust area, the rust doesn't go beyond the metal. So I can technically sand off the rust until the bare metal and then apply body filler to repair this area. The first step would be to sand. And for this, I will first clean the rear area and mask off the areas I don't want to paint. I'm going to use a heat gun to slowly remove the badges, which is an alternate method from using thread to cut the sticker. Alright, masking is done, and I had to remove the mud guards so that I could paint the bumper completely. I'm going to start wet sanding the work area, and according to the instructions, I'll start scuffing with the 400 grit step 3 blending sandpaper from 3M so I can create a nice bonding surface for the primer. As you can see, as soon as I start sanding off with the 400 grit, I can definitely notice that the OEM paint started disappearing, and that is because whoever painted this rear door before never actually used a primer and directly painted the base coat over the metal panel, which explains why there is so much rust under the number plate lights. Weatherproofing is really important when it comes to metals that are prone to be exposed to a lot of moisture. Although I could have removed the Honda logo trim, but to do that I would have to remove the rear back panel of the door shell, and I'm aware of the extent of the rust appearance on this panel, and it is highly likely that it will come back in the next decade. But for now, I'm gonna work with what I have on hand. I've worked on rust restoration before, and from that experience, I'm gonna be able to complete this restoration process a little quicker. Alright, sanding the rust till the bare metal is complete. So now I'm going to use a Bondo body filler, and here is one of the ways to mix this. Take a golf ball size putty and put a line of hardener right across the body filler, and then mix it in a way that you have consistent color of the filler. And be mindful that you have at most 3 to 4 minutes before the body filler starts completely hardening. So make sure you press and apply the filler on your work area within that time frame. Here are some of the rookie mistakes that I'm making. The first mistake is I'm putting way more body filler than required, and also on areas I don't need, which means I would have to put in more work on sanding the extra material for no reason. The next time I do a body filler work, I can take it as a lesson from this experience that I need to only focus on my work area, and next time I will try to wipe off any excess body filler when they're wet and easy to wipe, because once it dries up, it'll be a lot of work for me to sand and smoothen the panel. Alright, I'm back after a couple of hours break, and it appears that the body filler is completely dry and solid, so I can start sanding off the excess area to get a smooth body panel. I'm going to start with the 60 grit sandpaper, which is a very coarse sandpaper to remove bigger irregularities just like the hardened body filler, and then slowly move on to 80 grit and higher to make the area smoother. It is very important that you make sure you wear a mask or a respirator. To speed up the process, I'm going to use my Shawl 7-inch rotary polisher, and depending on your work area, you may or may not need a machine for sanding. As you saw in my previous rust repair video on my 2007 Lexus, I did the whole sanding process by hand and it was completely doable. Here's my second rookie mistake that you can learn as a lesson. I forgot to add an interface pad between the sandpaper and the rotary polisher disc, which is why I sanded a few deep spots through the body filler, which would definitely need another layer of body filler to fill in those deep spots. But I figured this area is gonna be behind the number plate and I don't really have much time in my deadlines, so I inspected the damage and I concluded to a decision that this is a minor defect, which I can just say that it is what it is on a 15-year-old car. But if I had more time on hand, I would definitely put another layer of body filler to smoothen this panel out. I have a strict timeline to finish this car, and it is also minus 40 degrees Celsius outside, so there's only so much a space heater can cover. It's always recommended to clean all sanding dust and spray some water on the floor before you want to apply any kind of primer or paint. I'm going to refer back to the instruction sheet, and since we have completed step 1 and step 2, for step 3, I have to wash the car thoroughly with soapy water and mask the area completely for step 4. Masking is almost done, and just to check my work, if I run my fingers over the rusted work area, it is not that uneven, and I know I'm touching the surface with my bare fingers, but I'm going to use a degreaser wipe provided in the paint kit. Here's the package I received from Scratches Happen. Right off the box, you get a pair of painter's gloves, a primer, 1K clear coat, the color matched paint in a can, and alcohol wipes. As I mentioned earlier, the base coat and the primer are waterborne paint, which is also the same used by many OEMs, and these paint cannot be wet sanded or washed with water, or they're gonna wash away. So the idea is, first I'm gonna apply the primer, then 3 or 4 layers of base coats, and then secure it with 3 to 4 medium heavy layers of 1K clear coat. 1K clear coat reacts with the air and hardens, so it doesn't need any additional hardener of any kind, such as the 2K clear coat. Here's the main difference. 1K clear coat is ideal for touch-ups, small projects, and it is thinner in nature. But 2K clear coat has a catalyst inside and is thicker and provides higher quality, long-lasting shine. In general, I always prefer to use 2K clear coat, but I'm going to use the 1K clear coat provided in this paint kit. On the test card, I applied about 3 coats of base coat and topped it up with a couple of layers of clear coat. And at this point, I'm happy with the paint match, so I'm going to continue with the rest of the steps on the instruction sheet. The only time I can apply the degreaser is before applying the primer on the scuffed surfaces, and this will help any dirt and grease to wipe away easily. Alright, now I'm going to apply the primer, and there is a nice summary of dry times between all kinds of coats on the instruction sheet, which is really helpful to keep handy because I often forget everything. I'm going to shake the aerosol can for about a minute, and you will know you are mixing the contents well when you can see small dents appearing on the bottom of the can, and that is from the mixing ball inside. It's important to always test the nozzle first away from the work area. And since I'm happy with the spraying output, I'm going to apply 3 layers of primer, starting with first light coat and followed by 2 medium heavy coats. I'm gonna wait for about an hour or more after the final primer coat before I can dry sand the primer. Alright, it's the next day and I can see that the primer is completely dry from the masking tape around it. So now the next step on the instruction sheet is to dry sand the primer and feather out the edges. The objective here is to dry sand the primer to remove any nibs, dust, and small blemishes that may cause defect on the base coat. I'm going to use a 3M 1000 grit sandpaper, and as soon as I start dry sanding, I can feel the rough surface become smooth and smooth after just a couple of passes. I don't really have to sand a lot, I just have to reach an acceptably smooth surface so the base coat can bond smoothly. Alright, dry sanding is done, so I'm wiping away all the sand dust using a clean dry tack cloth. It is important to know what kind of paint you're using because not all paints are waterborne, and since the paint I'm using today I cannot apply any water or degreaser on the primer or on the base coat. Now it's time to paint. And for the base coat aerosol can, I have to shake it well for about 1 to 3 minutes so that the chemicals inside can mix thoroughly for the optimal result. I'm going to quickly run another pass with my heat gun just to make sure there is no moisture, and the high speed of the heat gun will also blow away any remaining dust. It's always important to test the nozzle first away from the work area so that you can get a consistent spray output without any spills or drops. The first base coat layer will be a light coat covering the work area so that the second and the third medium heavy coat can bond properly. As you progress to the second and third coats, you will notice the color become more and more mature and closer to the desired paint. But keep in mind the only way you can measure a paint match is after the final clear coat has dried off. I put a total of 4 layers of base coat. The first coat was very light and the remaining 3 were medium heavy coats. Alright, the paint has dried out properly after a couple of hours, so now I'm going to prepare the clear coat aerosol can by shaking it for about a minute first and then applying 2 to 3 medium to full coats. It is very important that you carefully remove the masking tape from the paint edges so that the clear coat can settle down properly and not peel along with the tape when it's completely dried off. Alright, it's the next day and let's check the paint quality. It does appear to have a slight darker shade of blue, and I did mention in the beginning there will be a bit of difference in shade when you compare a 15-year-old OEM paint to a fresh wet paint. Here's what it looks like under the sun. I wouldn't know as a regular person that the rear was repainted at some point, but to the professional eyes, obviously you can see that there's a bit of darker blue shade on the new paint as compared to the 15-year-old factory paint. On the rear exterior, the surface is a bit rough, as expected after a fresh coat of clear coat, which will be gone from polishing. And for the badges, as you can see, this is what I was talking about earlier on leaving a bit of residue as a hint for where the badges were previously. And this will help me directly paste the badges on top of the sticker residue. So now the only thing left to paint is the interior of the panels. Ideally, I should have painted the interior of the door panels prior to painting the exterior, but I'll take this as a lesson. And now I'm going to mask the exterior and paint match the interior of the rear hatch. There is a bit of overspray because I kept the rear hatch a bit gapped, which will help me blend in with the interior of the panel. The only thing different is I'm skipping the primer here and directly going to scuff the paint because it is not really important on what is on the inside. I'm going to still scuff it well so that the base coat can bond well. I already went ahead and masked off the bumper bolts. Now I can go ahead with a couple of layers of base coat paint followed by a couple of layers of clear coat. Alright, clear coating is done on the interior of the panels and I think it looks great. And because it's the interior of the door panel, I don't think there is much to focus on the cosmetic appearance apart from just getting the proper color match done. And I do understand that because I skipped the primer on the interior panel, the brown color underneath does have a little slight shade effect on this new paint. But as I said, it is not a priority focus right now for the interior of the panel cosmetically. And for anybody who is not very picky on the body panels of a 15-year-old car, this shouldn't be an issue with the paint. So the only thing left now is to polish the exterior of the new paint. And I'm going to do that after 72 hours as instructed by the manufacturer. Meanwhile, for the badges that I removed earlier, I'm going to use a double-sided heavy-duty 3M Scotch tape and cut to shape using a sharp cutting knife. Although this video is not sponsored, but I'll put the link in the description for every item I used in this video, so you can do a complete paint job at home too. Finally, it's time to polish, and the concept is because it's a freshly painted surface, there are irregular, uneven surfaces which we need to cut by wet sanding and polishing to minimize the irregularity and get a smooth finished output for the light to reflect. Here's the bumper bowl tab with the OEM paint that I removed earlier, so now I'm going to put it back and hopefully the color should not be much variant. There you go. It doesn't seem to be a huge anomaly, but because I'm the one who painted it, I know that there is a bit of difference. However, I'm sure it is good to go. Now, the only significant thing I need to show you is remember when earlier I used my rotary polisher to sand off the excess body filler, I actually forgot to use an interface pad and this caused some deep sanding and now it looks a bit distorted if you look deep and hence some of the body filler work turned out uneven, which I'm not really proud of. I decided not to redo the body filler work again and that is because majority of it is going to be behind the number plate all the time. So it is not a high priority cosmetically. I definitely agree there is no reason to justify an unfinished job for this rust repair under the number plate light, but keeping in mind it is freezing cold outside and cosmetically it is not significantly visible for it to be redone again. I'm going to thoroughly wash this area with soap water and prepare it for polishing. I'm using a foam block wrapped with 2000 grit wet sandpaper and the idea here is to smoothen out the surface evenly without sanding deep, and as soon as I start sanding, I can feel the surface becoming smoother and smoother, and already I can see some reflections come back. After wet sanding with 2000 grit sandpaper, I'm going to thoroughly wash with soapy water and then clean the work area to get all the dirt and debris out. For this fresh paint job, I'm going to use the Meguiar's 105 Ultra Cut compound and polish the whole work area. And for the second stage, today I'm going to try out two different finishing polish. The first one is the Meguiar's 205 Ultra Finishing Polish and the other one is Meguiar's Ultimate Compound, which I haven't used before. For Meguiar's Ultimate Compound, the reviews are very positive, so I decided to test this out today. Again, this is not a sponsored episode. Whatever result you see today, you can be the better judge. I'm thinking to use the Meguiar's 205 finishing polish on the right bumper panel first without using the 105 Ultra Cut compound just to see what effect it has in terms of shine. For the fine polishing, I'm going to use an orange medium soft foam polishing pad and always make sure to shake the bottle well to mix the contents. You can also paint a freshly painted body part by hand too, but in today's episode, I'm going to use my 7-inch Shawl rotary polisher with variable speed and handle that's going to help me polish easily. I'm going to start on small work areas, approximately 2 by 2 feet, and progressively increase eventually. Here's the thing about polishing. It is always good to test out various techniques until you find the perfect one. Alright, here's the results from the first stage of 205 polishing, and it didn't bring out much shine, so I'm going to switch to a wool pad with Meguiar's 105 Ultra Cut compound to cut this rough sanded surface. Alright, on the left rear bumper, after the 105 Ultra Cut compound, I'm going to use the new Ultimate compound today using a black soft foam pad and compare the difference. And as you can notice, the rear bumper has a lot of curves and edges, so a 7-inch polishing pad is technically not an ideal choice, but I had to make it work with whatever I had in hand carefully without causing any scuff or damages. Alright, final stage of polishing is done and I think I'm happy with the results so far. So now finally I can put back the badges, and here's where I'm going to refer to the previous sticker residue to properly align and freshly stick the new badges in just about a few seconds. I am super happy with the results I could achieve for all the work I was able to do completely at home. It looks absolutely phenomenal, and under different angles, the shade appears a bit different on the new paint versus the old, which is very normal because the older paint is about 15 years old from the factory and the new paint is wet. It is not very noticeable to a general public who doesn't know that the rear hatch was another color before. And I think the polishing work is also satisfactory, as I can see myself as a reflection on the body of the car, and since I'm not a professional yet, I think this is a good result. Check out the difference between the old paint and the new paint. The new paint does have a bit darker blue shade on it. For a first timer completely repainting the rear end of an SUV, I think this looks absolutely phenomenal and I'm happy with the results. This car was hit from the back, which then got its rear door and bumper replaced, and later I painted it to almost match the color all by myself at home. Let me know in the comments below what you think I should have done differently, and if you've noticed any other mistakes that I didn't mention before, so I don't repeat that on my next job. But overall, I think the result is satisfactory, although it has some blemishes. I put the links in the description below of all the products I've used today, and if you've learned something new, hit the thumbs up button and don't forget to subscribe. Until next time, I'll see you on the next one.